Today's conversation is sponsored by First Generation Capital Partners.
I can now see that within the next few years, my passive income will exceed my earned active income in my day job. And I make a relatively good living, crushing it in my day job.
You're listening to the Going Long podcast with Billy Keels, the #1 podcast for long-distance real asset investing.
Welcome to the Going Long podcast. We're back once again to continue to help to educate you so you feel much more comfortable as well as confident investing beyond your backyard. I'm your host, Billy Keels, and we're back for another amazing conversation, another amazing episode of the Going Long podcast. And listen, I just want to continue to say thank you so very much. It has been fantastic and continues to be fantastic to bring new, exciting episodes full of education to you. If you've already left an honest written review as well as rating, thank you very much. If you've not done that, I've got a nice little video. Take just a couple seconds to leave one. And we also want to thank you, or I want to thank you for continuing to share across Instagram, across LinkedIn. Tagging us means a lot. And so for those of you also who want to check out maybe some of the previous episodes of the podcast, you can go to firstgencp.com/podcasts, and you can find every single podcast we've ever done, the audio, the video, the transcripts, all that kind of cool stuff. So firstgencp.com/podcasts. And if you are here and you're looking for your own personal starting point and being able to get moving or forward or faster in this real estate game and the real asset game, today's conversation, especially if you are a recovering perfectionist, if you are someone who has been working in the corporate world, maybe you've been out there a decade or two, and you also enjoy what you're doing and you're looking to be able to expand, create more freedom for yourself, whether that's time, whether that's financial. Today's conversation, you're really going to get a lot out of it. I'm very, very sure, because today we're speaking with the founder and managing partner of Starting Point Capital, Mr. Jeremy Dyer, and we're going to get to that conversation just after this. So if you really want to understand how you can find your starting point in your long distance investing journeys and success, then guess what? Today's a conversation you're going to want to listen to until the very last word. You know why? Because today's guest, not only spent his corporate career helping business owners grow their core competencies so that they could do some other stuff, which is really, really cool, and expand their businesses, but I'm sure he's going to tell us more about that. He also has a massive passion for the sales profession. That's music to my ears and probably to your ears as well. He's also been a professional, or is a professional passive real estate investor, which everybody wants to hear more about that. And it gives me great pleasure to welcome today the founder and managing partner of Starting Point Capital. Welcome to the show, Mr. Jeremy Dyer. Welcome to the show, Jeremy.
Billy, thank you for having me.
Hey man, it's always fun to have people that are in the sales profession and sales leadership, and also enjoy real assets. That's always it's always a fantastic combination. So I'm looking forward to you adding loads of value to the Going Long family today. And I really want to jump in, man, because you know the format. You're going to get 5 questions. Well, sort of, because you're going to get 2 in the beginning. You're going to get 3 in the middle, and then you're probably going to get a lot in the middle. I just don't know how many of the questions those are. So as long as you're all right, man, I want to jump in.
Yeah, I think I'm ready to go, and hopefully we'll get through the very first question with enough time here.
All right. You're keeping me honest. Here we go. So help us understand, where exactly are you calling home nowadays?
Yes, sir. So I live in the Twin Cities, which is specifically Minneapolis and St. Paul area in Minnesota.
All right, fantastic. And depending on what time of year you're there, you can either be outside a lot or outside a little. Is that right?
Yeah, totally true. So us hardy Minnesotans here, we will venture outside, even in the very cold winter months. But, certainly we love our 70s and 80 degree temperatures, but not so lucky, during the months of, call it December, through February. But, what we like to say in Minnesota is we live in the land of 10,000 extremes, which means we could go, one day from being in the 90s to the next day being in the 50s.
Yeah. All right. Well, I just want everybody, if you're not watching the video version, you check out the video version and you let us know what season you think that we're having this conversation in. Anyway, so listen, Jeremy, question number 2, man, because I love positivity, and I know that the Going Long family does as well. Help us understand, what is the most positive thing that has happened to you or for you in the last 24 hours?
Yeah, tough question, right? Because there's a lot going on all the time. So I would say in the last 24 hours, I successfully made it back home from Michigan why I was in Michigan was because my oldest son was in a national trap shooting competition. If you're not familiar with trap shooting, it's mostly high school kids shooting 12 gauge shotguns at clay pigeons or clay targets in the air. And my son did well enough this year to be able to qualify to shoot at the national stage in Mason, Michigan, just south of Lansing. And that was an excellent trip. We just got back yesterday, brought the RV out there with the other kiddos, and just had a really good time out there. So that was probably the most positive thing that happened to me, is I got home safely from 1,000 hours of driving an RV.
Fantastic, man. I appreciate you sharing that. It's always fun when you can kind of get that quality family time and head out, make it back safe and sound, and be good to go, man. So I appreciate you sharing that, Jeremy. And the Going Long family knows this about me already. And so I always just tell them myself. So especially when we have awesome guests like yourself, I am a recovering perfectionist. What that means is that I try to do things sometimes that are not really possible to do, like telling your entire backstory. And I don't know if I give myself 1.5 seconds today, something like that. So I'm going to ask for your help right up front, Jeremy. I would love for you to share your backstory in your own words, and you can take a lot more than 1.5 seconds because you're the person that all this stuff is happening for and to. And then also, if you could help me out, and this is going to really help the Going Long family to get to know you even that much more, which is if you could tell us about some of the major decisions that you've made up to this point in your journey, and then we'll see where you and I take the conversation from there.
Yeah, that sounds great. Is there a group out there that exists for recovering perfectionists?
That's a great question. And I can't say yes right off the top of my head, but I think I should probably create one. Why do you ask?
I think I would be interested to join the group.
Hey, we may start it. All right, cool.
Thank you for the question. I appreciate that. So I'll try to condense it as much as I can. Everybody typically has a relatively long story, no pun intended there, Billy. But so I really got started in the real estate game back in around 2012. The genesis of getting into real estate at that point in time was really a couple of reasons. Number one, I have been for a number of years a top professional in my job, really kind of crushing it, killing it in my day job, so to speak, as a decorated, high performing sales professional. And back in 2012, I found myself wanting to have a side hustle, and I always loved real estate. My wife loved real estate. My dad was a general contractor, so he certainly knew the construction side of the business. And in 2012, we launched an active real estate fix and flip business. Between 2012 and 2015, we fixed and flipped a bunch of houses, made 20, 30, 40, 50 grand, in those active fix and flips. My wife was primarily on the decorating side, of the business, and my dad was the general contractor. But what happened in 2015, and the main reason why we exited that active form of real estate, was really a couple of reasons. Number one, in order for us to scale that business, I was going to have to take it to the next level. That next level would be, rather than fixing and flipping 2 or 3 houses a year, I was going to have to start fixing and flipping, 10, 12, 15 houses per year in order for that business to cash flow where I needed it to cash flow relative to my time investment in that business. The second thing that happened at that same time in 2015 is my wife and I decided to double down on children. So we went from 2 kids to 4 kids. And our 2 older children were very active in sports and athletics and all the different activities, that 4 to 6 to 8-year-olds, are involved with. And so it really became this point where we had to make a decision. Am I going to continue to be able to operate at a high performing level in my day job, having 2 full-time jobs? Okay. So back in 2015, we made the decision to exit the active real estate fix and flip and rental business, and instead decided to passively invest into real estate. Incredibly thankful that I made that decision at that time, because if I had not made that decision, I'm relatively confident in saying this, and that is that I would not have had a good enough or great enough work-life balance. My kids see me a lot right now because I'm not actively involved in swinging hammers on weekends anymore, dealing with tenant issues, dealing with, repositioning assets. I don't have to be actively involved in that business anymore. And in 2015, I decided to passively invest. I made my first investment, what I would call the shotgun approach. Okay. I knew, liked, and trusted the sponsor or the general partner enough to say, I trust you that you're going to be a good fiduciary of my money. So I held my breath, I plugged my nose, I sent in my wire transfer, and thankfully 3 years later, the operator had doubled my money. And from that point, I was completely hooked on the strategy of passively investing in real estate versus doing it on the active side, because I quickly realized that I could make just as much, if not more, as a passive investor than I was spending, a lot of my own time and resources actively managing those real estate assets.
So actually, was there anything else you wanted to add on there?
Hey, we're both recovering sales guys. I got all kinds of stuff that I could talk about, but I figured I'd step up here, get a breath. But yeah, a lot more to unpack there for sure.
Thank you very much. That's very kind of you. I appreciate that. So there's a couple of different kind of things that are that you have experienced, which I'd like to draw on. And so you mentioned that you had this experience. It was, you closed your eyes, you plugged your nose and you made another leap of faith, right? And that was a movement from an active world to a passive world. And a lot of times people start, especially when you're like, so here's the thing, like I relate to you a lot because you're crushing it, you're in your day job, you're doing, like people are like, hey, you should be doing all this kind of stuff and you should only be focused on the thing that you're doing for your job and blah, blah, blah. So and it happens to a lot of us. And so what we decide is that we take the passive route first and we do that for a while. But you did something very similar to what I did, which is like, hang on a second, I'm just going to take the active route. And I would be curious for you to talk to us about the mindset that you had when you decided to, or maybe not why, but when you decided to go active versus going passive. And I'm asking you the question knowing that you may not have even known the passive investing world went, but why did you go down the path of active?
Yeah, it's a good question. So I've actually made two different transitions, right? My first transition was to get into active real estate because I saw what I saw on HGTV, just like everybody else, right? Gotcha. These fix and flippers out there, they were crushing it. It was really a way for me to supplement my wife's income in a way. Why? Because when my firstborn was born, my wife retired from the W-2 at that time, right? Gotcha. And, she had some additional disposable time, in her calendar. I had some disposable time because at that moment in time, I only had one child, right? So there was a little bit more time freedom at that stage in my life. Yep. And of course, I wanted to, get into real estate because I just love the business. And so I did that. The other transition occurred, which I spoke about already in 2015. Right. Yep. So that transition to passive real estate occurred during that time. But then if you fast forward from 2015 now to most recently, within the last 2 years, I've made another transition back to active real estate again. Okay. And how I've done that is not in the fix and flip business, but rather that's helping educate other investors on what I've seen to be an incredibly life transformative way of investing and building generational wealth. And what I mean by that is that investment that I made in my first real estate deal as a passive investor in 2015, if you fast forward to today, I'm currently involved in 25 limited partner investments, mostly in the multifamily space, but also in assisted living, self-storage, flex office, retail. So I am diversified both in multifamily and in other asset classes. And I see how after having made investments over the last 5 to 8 years, I can now see the light at the end of the tunnel that says, if I continue along the same journey or strategy of continuing to compound those investments one into another, right? And the monthly distributions that follow and the profit that I receive when those deals go full cycle, I can now see that within the next few years, my passive income will exceed my earned active income in my day job. And I make a relatively good living, crushing it in my day job. So because of that success, I've found myself in a place of wanting to really encourage other investors to come along this journey with me, right? It almost kind of feels, a little bit like I'm, preaching the gospel in some respects, right? Where I want people to come along on this investment journey with me. And so I formed a company called Starting Point Capital 2 years ago. And Starting Point Capital merely exists to help investors learn about the benefits of passive real estate investing and ultimately giving them those opportunities to potentially partner alongside with us in those investments as well.
Very informative. So I appreciate that. And then as you helped us understand, the experiences that you've had, one of the outcomes is the creation of Starting Point Capital and helping to educate and bring this knowledge to others. And there's a word that you continue to say, and I want to and I'm really speaking to that person who is, because I'm thinking about where I was a couple of years ago, right? And in the corporate role, and you're building this life, and you've got things going on with family and this and that. And you've mentioned right in the very beginning that you made an evaluation of whether or not the time investment made sense for you, right? And it's something that also knowing a little bit about kind of in the world in which you live, help the person who's trying to figure out the time investment, I don't want you to tell what your exact thing was, but kind of how did you go about doing that? Because it's something that's critical, that if you don't actually stop to think about the investment of your time and the outcome or result that you're going to get, you may find yourself in 2 or 3 jobs. So maybe talk to us a little bit about that concept, because I hear you talking about it over and over. Time and time investment was one of the things you talked about just in the very beginning to try to help that person who's sitting in a similar situation you were back in 2012, 2015.
Yeah, it's a really good question, and I really like this one. So, oftentimes we'll hear things like financial freedom, right? I am more focused on time freedom, and what I mean by that is we only have so much available time on this earth to spend, right? We can always create more money, but we cannot create more time. So with that in mind, the way that I have kind of structured, my framework or my mind around this is really more along the lines of not wanting to find avenues to create more money for myself, but to find ways that I can model my life around the remaining time that I have left, which basically means that I'm now laser focused on spending time on things that I want to spend time on. Okay. Back in 2015, it was not spending time swinging hammers on evenings and weekends. It was spending time with my 4 children. Okay. And now that I've been in a corporate job for almost a quarter of a decade, right? Am I saying that right? Century.
Yeah.
Not 2.5 years, but rather 25 years.
Okay? Yeah. I love how you broke that down for everybody.
Yeah, thank you. So rather than spending and focusing my time in that job, which I like and I love the people, and it's a great job for me, right? It's been a great employer that I've worked for a long time, and I've really learned a lot there. Yep. My challenge now in my life, as I'm in my mid 40s, is I see the runway that I have left. Okay. And what do I want to be spending my time on, going forward? And that is, for me, it's educating people on how they can also make decisions today to invest in things or in real assets, for example, that produce cash flow, so that in the future, whether that's 5 years or 10 years or 20 years down the road, they're also in a position where they can also make decisions to spend their remaining years on the things that they love to do.
Yeah. And when you're able to, and I always like to put a little twist on this, right? It's because you're investing your time in the things that you really want to do, right? So, and it's one of those things, it's really interesting because I'm listening to you, I'm like, man, I was in my mid 40s as well. And that's happened to me. And all these things started clicking, and you want to make impact on others, because it is about being able to at least shed a light. And then whether or not you like your role, because I really liked my role. I spent 26 years in corporate. I spent the last 16 years at a very large enterprise software company. I can say it nowadays, but I still choose not to. And it was one of those things that you start realizing, like, yeah, man, you can continue to go out and crush it and do this kind of stuff. But there are also moments where you really just want to be able to invest your time doing the things that you want to do with the people that you want to do it with. There's also this, I don't think I've ever asked this question before, so I'm going to take the opportunity to ask you. Because I remember in my mind, there were all these things that I wanted to invest my time in, and I wanted to do this stuff. And sometimes I would actually try things that I thought I wanted to invest my time in. And when I invested my time in them, I realized that I didn't like it so much.
Yeah.
And I'm just curious if that's happened to you, and when it happened to you, kind of what did that do to your psyche of, hey, listen, I want to get more time freedom?
Yeah, it's a good question. So it's really, obviously, as we know, it's trial and error, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's certain side hustles that we decide to get into, and then we realize months later, years later, why on earth did I do that, right? I'm going to give your audience just one example, okay, that's nice and close and home to me, okay?
And
so
just before you do that, I love that you're already going down this track, and this is for every single one of you who are going to be joining Jeremy and I's Recovering Perfectionist group. It doesn't always work, and he's getting ready to give you a very specific example, and it's okay. So please, Jeremy.
Absolutely. Thank you. So one thing that a lot of people know about me is I love coffee. Okay. I also have 4 children that are very entrepreneurial minded. Okay. So my kids came to me 4 years ago with a proposition. They wanted to start a business. Okay. They didn't know what the business was going to be. It was going to be anywhere from a lemonade stand to a drop shipping business. Okay. And I encouraged them to consider starting up a coffee roasting business. Okay. They agreed with me, knowing that 90% of American adults drink coffee, not just once in a while, but every single day, right? So we went out and we made a big investment in an industrial size coffee roaster, okay? And we started figuring out the process and cranking out the beans and, setting up a website and selling them. That was a lot of fun early on for me, okay? Because I was teaching my children all about owning a small business, right? Anything from the marketing side to the customer service side to the product side, accounting, finance, you name it. My kids at the time were, I don't know, probably 6 to 12, something like that. And they were learning all about running and managing a business. The challenge for me specifically, okay, is that I was the only one that really knew how to roast the coffee. Okay. I can't have my 6-year-old sitting over a coffee roaster that's burning at 500 degrees, right? So the challenge for me is the business was growing too big. Okay. I was spending a considerable amount of my time, evenings and weekends, roasting coffee so that they could fulfill orders. So we unfortunately had to make that decision. It's time to step away from that. We got out of that business what we wanted to get out of it. The kids paid off the business and all these startup expenses in 24 months. So it was a very, cash flowing, lucrative business, but it was also taking a lot of my time. Right. And it was time for me to step away from that and let the kids know it's time to make that transition out of spending time growing that business.
Jeremy, thank you for sharing that, because it is about when you are able to set a goal for yourself, and you're going to, if you have the opportunity, you're fortunate enough, and this is to the Go Along family, you're fortunate enough to try something. You've created the freedom, whether it's financial, time, or both, to be able to try something. It's not always going to work. I've learned that. And as a recovering perfectionist, initially it was very, very difficult. And then you realize moving forward that there are some things that you will you have a specific objective. And if you're fortunate enough to move towards that, and if it doesn't work, then you need to, pivot or move on or take the learning from it and go from there. So, there's one kind of question I do want to ask you before we kind of get into the Going Long Final 3. And this goes back to corporate success, being able to crush it in the day job, being able to go after goals and dreams that you and your family have set out for yourself. I did it for a long time, Jeremy, and it's not easy to do, right? Because usually at some point, balls start dropping. You've been able to do this for a sustained period of time. Can you give us some of the insights that have allowed you talked about, you have frameworks, right? You talked about the time earlier, but maybe what are some of your secrets, if you don't mind sharing with us, that have allowed you to excel not only in the day job, it's also allowing you to excel and thrive in other ventures?
Yeah, good. It's a great question. And I get that question a lot, right? I would say that there's probably three different things for me. Number one is not sweating the small stuff, right? Being in a high performing sales professional role is a grind. Okay. And there's constantly things, just like in real estate, there's constantly things that are going wrong, right? Yep. The same thing happens in my day job, not sweating the small stuff, not looking backwards, but always kind of having, your eyes fixated right on the future and what those goals look like. And obviously breaking down those goals, not into annual goals, but rather what are my goals for today? What are my goals for this week? Right. Mm-hmm. Obviously mindset is a huge one. I'm a big proponent of reading books and listening to podcasts, leveling up myself. Okay. When I say leveling up myself, I mean, becoming or being a better person, right? And continually working on being a better version of yourself. And then another huge one, that again, goes back to real estate is my wife's ability to be able to work out of our home, right? Not work a W-2 job, but be able to care for and nurture our children and educate our children and really take a lot of the things off of my plate that I would normally have to do on the weekends and evenings has really afforded me to be able to stay laser focused on my sales job, right? And real estate investing played a huge part in our ability to do that.
Fantastic. I appreciate that, and being able to not sweat the small stuff, be able to keep the right mindset. And then also at home, having that right partnership and that communication and being able to thrive both at the office and in life. So appreciate that. You know what, Jeremy? I'm just loving this conversation. And the thing is, like, we got to get to the Going Long Final 3, man.
All good things have to come to an end.
Well, somewhat. Yeah, sometimes. At least that's what they say. I don't necessarily know if I believe that. But hey, anyway. But yeah, we got to get to the Going Long Final 3. And the thing is, I never ask any of our guests, and today you're our special guest, Jeremy, any of the Going Long Final 3 until you tell me that you're ready. So are you ready?
Ready to roll.
All right, you're ready to rock and roll. Sales professionals unite. So here we go. We started with you over in the, what'd you say, the land of 10,000 changes?
Well, it's originally the land of 10,000
lakes. Yeah, exactly.
But it's the land of 10,000 extremes, right?
Extremes. Yeah. Okay, there we go. Okay, that was your version of it. I didn't want to say lakes because well, anyway. So 10,000 extremes. And so I'm a guy who's originally from the Midwest in Ohio. And so I kind of want to bring things back to where I have been living for almost a quarter of a century, I think is how you put it earlier. So over here in Europe. So I'd love for you to share with us, Jeremy, what is your favorite European city that you've either visited or is still on your bucket list to visit?
Yeah, I've been blessed to be able to travel all over Europe. Okay. I'm not going to be able to give you one city because I love like a dozen of them, but
What?
hold the phone. But yeah, no, I mean, I've been everywhere from, Paris to Monaco to Estonia to Iceland, Ireland, Sweden, the UK, Italy, right? I would say that the one part of Europe that I've spent the least amount of time in that I would love to visit, is really Eastern Europe. I'd love to visit, a country like Poland, for example. But, there's who doesn't love Monaco if you've not been there? It's just a fantastic country, right? Beautiful country, expensive country, right? Mm-hmm. I think the last time I was there, I was spending, $15 US on a beer, right? But I also, obviously, I love Estonia. I mean, who couldn't love the quaint Estonia medieval town? It's just beautiful. So I love a lot of places in Europe. So unfortunately, I can't pigeon it down to just one.
But you have to pick one, man. Sorry, you can't get off that easily.
All right. I really liked the archipelago in Stockholm, Sweden. So we'll go with Stockholm, Sweden. Yeah.
There you go. See, look,
plus, man, plus I'm Swedish. I'm Swedish.
There you go. So there you go. Okay, perfect. Stockholm, it is. You pulled that out the last second. I like that. So here's the other thing. As you're trying things, you have created the opportunity to have more time freedom, financial freedom along the way. Chances are you're not going to get to every goal that you expect to get to. We talked about it earlier. And so you either have what a lot of people call mistakes, you make mistakes, or you have learning opportunities. And so I don't really want you to think about the mistake, because you shared something with us earlier. I really would like for you to think about the going along family member who's listening today and is thinking, wow, you know what? I'd really love for Jeremy to share one of the lessons that he learned when he tried something and it didn't work out, so that he paid full price for that mistake or learning opportunity. I don't want to have to do the exact same thing. So think about the one lesson that you want to share with the Going Long family today that somebody needs to hear. What would that one lesson you want to share with us be?
Yeah. Well, I've got a lot of lessons. Okay. But I'm going to condense one of them for your listening audience. So in my 20s, I wanted to get rich quick. Okay. And I shouldn't say that. I wanted to get rich quick. It's true. Okay. When I was 21 years old, I decided back in that time that I was going to start day trading stocks. I didn't call it day trading, but that's really what it was. Okay. Mm-hmm. I wanted to buy the next, Tesla stock, Facebook stock, Yahoo stock, whatever, right? I was laser focused at getting rich quick, buying and trading stocks. Okay. Mm-hmm. I was also in college at that same time. All right. And I needed a little bit of extra cash. So what did I do? I started using my college tuition to trade stocks. Okay. And back in college, it was around the 2000 .com bubble bust. Okay. Well, not only was I losing money day trading, but I was also losing my college tuition, and I was trading stocks on margin, which, as stocks were tanking, only accelerated the losses. Okay. So anyways, I'm so thankful that happened to me in my early 20s, because I've never gone back to thinking that I can make money being a day trader. There are people that do that are professionals at that, and bless their hearts. Okay. Mm-hmm. But for me, it's more about spending time in the market, right? Versus trying to time the market. And that's a lesson that I learned early on enough.
Be in the market, know the market, and don't look for overnight success. So I appreciate you sharing that experience with us. And, that brings us to the last question, which seems really, really hard to believe, but I always like to fill our minds with some knowledge. So what's one book, Jeremy? You talked about you love reading and leveling up and stuff like that. What's one book that you'd recommend to the Going Long family today?
Yeah, there's a couple of them for, new passive investors or investors that have maybe just recently started to get into, investing, passively into real estate. I'm a really big fan of the Hands Off Investor book by Brian Burke. Chances are a lot of your audience has probably heard that book. I also really like a book called The Psychology of Money by Morgan Housel. A book about timeless lessons learned on wealth and greed and happiness, and how much money can be used in a good way in society, but can also be used in a bad way. And a lot of that comes down to the individual's mindset and their relationship, quite frankly, with money. So there's a couple for you.
All right, fantastic. Once again, over delivering. This is what happens whenever we get these sales professionals, sales leaders here. So we'll go with the Hands Off Investor, also The Psychology of Money. one of the two or both will be in the show notes, everybody. So don't worry. But I'm thinking about how quickly these conversations go by, and I think about the very beginning. And you talk about the trap shooting trip and being able to travel 1,000 hours with the family, and that being like the most positive thing. We jumped into your story, and you start telling us about things that happen, not only crushing it consistently in your day job in a quarter of a century. You also talked to us about in 2012. Well, you know what? It was kind of time for you to also do some other stuff. And so as you started flipping and fixing and flipping your way to some success, you sat down and you realized, hey, listen, you know what? I want to figure out, where am I investing my time? Where am I going to get the highest return on my time in order to be able to do the things that you really wanted to do? 2015 comes around. You decide like, hey, listen, man, this is, either I'm going to scale, family's doubling, kids are doubling. And you decided, hang on a second, maybe it makes a lot of sense to try this passive thing. And so take your shotgun approach, you get out there and you start to have some success, and you realize, wait, hang on a second, I can do a lot more of this and still perform in my day job and be able to spend more and invest more time with my family, et cetera, et cetera. And so not only have you gone from active to passive and now active in this approach to be able to really share with others and help them find their starting point and being able to level up on their education, share your experience. Everybody in the Going Long family is thinking, yeah, Billy, it's all really awesome, but just ask him the question. So I'm going to ask you the question. Here's the thing, Jeremy. Everybody wants to know, what is the best way for the Going Long family to reach out, connect with you, find out more about what you also have going on at Starting Point LLC?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. And by the way, excellent summary. Okay. You do one thing very well, and that is you're an excellent listener. So thank you for kind of unpacking our conversation here. But so your audience can connect with me. Usually one of two ways is best. I am relatively active on LinkedIn, so you can find me there, Jeremy Dyer. You can also head over to our website, startingpointcapital.com. Again, that's startingpointcapital.com.
Fantastic. And thank you, because you just repeated it because I said something different earlier, and it's Starting Point Capital. So appreciate it. Check them out, everybody. Listen, on behalf of the entire Going Long family, Jeremy, I just want to say thank you for deciding to invest your time with me, with us, and sharing your insights. Thank you very much. Really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me, Billy.
All right, cool. And listen, Jeremy, if I can just ask one last favor, man, give me like 15 seconds. I'm just going to wrap things up with the Going Long family. Everybody, listen. Yeah, come on. You get two sales professionals, sales leaders here, and this is kind of what happens. So Jeremy left all the goods. Make sure that you take today's conversation, share it with family, share it with friends, especially if you're that recovering perfectionist, you're in your day job, you're crushing it, and you really want to be able to do something else. He's left a lot of nuggets, gold nuggets here for you to be able to pick up. So while you're doing that, sharing and taking this from theory to practice, I'll be here preparing for the next conversation. So until then, go out and make it a great day. And thank you very much.